What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Freedom Fab. Let's show you guys what we're up to tonight. Alright, so in this episode, we've got a tractor attachment here, and I think they call this a furrower. So the owner of this is a friend of mine, and he owns a ranch out west of here, pretty similar to the Dutton Ranch, if you guys are familiar with Yellowstone. So this friend of mine is currently in the process of trying to get this farm going. He's planted alfalfa, he's got a pivot out there, so it's a pretty serious deal. He came to me and asked if we could take this 3-point connection for his tractor and modify it. And the reason we need to modify it, we're going to take just this piece, we're going to cut it off, and we're going to use it to build basically a pivot wheel trench barrier. I don't know how else to say it. So the situation is this pivot. If you don't know what a pivot is, I'll show you right now. So his pivot goes in a circle, waters his hay, and those tires that are on the pivot, as they go around, they sit and dig trenches. The hope is that we can take this, build a frame on the back, and it will have some blades on it that will kick the soil back into the trenches, and it will actually kick the soil in and grade it as he pulls it behind his tractor. So that's our goal. So we'll go ahead and we'll go back in the shop, and I'll show you guys what I'm thinking for a design. All right, guys, so this is a pretty rough design, but let's just go through this real quick. So this is what I'm thinking. There will be a blade on this side, a blade on this side, and then a blade on the back. The widest point of these trenches is 36 inches. So we're gonna make the outside of these blades wider than 36 inches so that it will kick all the dirt in. We don't wanna have dirt rolling around the outside of this making a mess. We want to kick as much dirt back in the trench as possible. And then this blade on the back will be angled in, and it will actually grade the dirt that gets kicked back in the trench as it goes. So that's kind of the plan. The next order of business is I've kind of done some sketching on the table on how big I want these blades to be. We're actually going to use the press brake to break them in a couple different spots so that we can kind of give it a plow effect. So it'll have a curve to it. That's going to help as the tractor goes by. That will help the soil roll forward and roll into the trench. That's what I'm thinking. I know it's rough. Let's see what we can come up with. All right, guys, we got our 3-point connection here on the table. So I've taken and drawn a line. I pulled 6 inches off this. I just wanted a consistent measurement. So I pulled 6 inches off the edge of this plate, used a square, drew a line. The frame is actually not going to weld to this side. It's going to weld to the bottom of these plates. So I just wanted these to be square. I want it to look nice. So I've pulled that. We're going to go ahead and cut this with a torch. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and torch this off now. I'm going to do all 4 until all of this jazz is out of our way. So let's go ahead and cut this off. Okay, so we are back on our pivot ditch filler thingamajigger. I'm just working on getting some plate cut here. I've got the first piece cut for one of the plows on either side. I'm going to cut another one of those here, and I think I'm going to hold off on the center plow because I'm not sure how I want to set that up. I'm trying to decide if I want to have 2 plows on either side and then one that sits back, or do I want to have it shaped like this and have it connect? And I haven't decided yet. I kind of think I want it sitting back because the dirt will roll down the plow into the ditch, and the back plow will basically just be there to grade the top off. This is pretty much the process of me just trying to talk myself into one way or another. I think what I'm going to do is cut this one, and I'm going to hold off on the center one. And then we'll be able to take these, start doing the brake work on them. And I need to pick up some material for the frame. I'm going to build the frame out of 2x2 by quarter square tube. So we'll go ahead and see what we can get done with this. And then once we get this cut out, we'll come back to you and give you guys an update. All right, so there's our 2 pieces of 3/8 plate, 18 by 24. We'll go ahead and squeegee this off, get it over to the table, start cleaning it up and getting it ready for some brake work. All right, guys, we got our plate all cleaned up here. What I'm gonna do is mark this every 3 inches. I'm gonna do this on both ends. So I've got to go ahead and lay this out. Okay, so now that we got that laid out with all of our lines on it, we'll take this over to the press brake, we'll stick it in there, and we'll just bend 30 degrees in all 5 locations, and then we'll show you guys how it ends up. All right, guys, I almost made a mistake here. Maybe not a mistake, but I know one way that I can make this better. I want to be able to build this so that it will last the customer a lifetime. As I got thinking about this, if I have a plow, this leading edge is what's taking most of the wear. And even though it's in pretty clean soil, eventually he's going to use this to put gravel in the wheel ditches of the pivot. And gravel is going to cause a lot more wear. So I think what I want to do is I want to burn some square holes in this, probably 4 square holes, and then I want to put a wear plate on it, and I'll probably have it be 3 inches, but I'll take that wear plate and I'll burn some square holes in that as well. I don't need square holes in this. I need square holes in the wear plate. So I want to put a wear plate on this so that when it wears out, all we have to do is pull the 4 bolts, slap on a new wear plate, and tighten that down. I think I can do that after, so we'll go ahead and we'll continue with breaking this plate. And then when we get further along and close to putting the wear plate stuff on here, I'll come back and show you. Two down. Three down. I'm trying to decide if I like that profile or not. I feel like if I make that last bend, it might be a little bit too much, but I do kind of like having this bottom flat piece, so I may just leave it like that. That way the soil can roll up this and roll into the trench. So I may just leave that. I think it's good. We're gonna roll with it. All right, guys, so here's what we got going tonight. I burned some brackets here. These are gonna mount right here So you can see it fits the profile that's broke on the back of these plows. So it fits in perfect there. The other good thing about that is once we get these tacked on, we can stick a level on this and level these and get them exactly perpendicular to this corner right here. So these will weld here, and then there will be a piece of flat bar, 3/8 flat bar, and that's going to get stitch welded on right here between the two. And then we'll have some square tube that comes up off of those and across, and that's what our 3-point connection is going to weld to. So it's slowly coming together. The engineering brain is getting an exercise tonight. So you can see I've got this marked. So I've marked 3 3/4. Okay, so now that I got that marked, I can stick those right where I want them, tack them up, and then I can stick this flat bar in between and get that tacked up as well. I'm going to get my welding gear on, get the welder hooked up. We'll come back and start tacking this all together. Done deal. All right, guys, we got our marks on the table. We're just trying to get this tack back on. So I've got my level. I'm going to set it on this plate and level off of that. So now we can start building the frame that holds this together and that our 3-point mounts to. I want to get everything tacked up. Once I get everything tacked up, the frame, the main structure, we still got to fabricate our back plow that's going to grade the dirt that goes into the trench. Still trying to figure out how I want to do that, but all right, this is going to take some brain power, which is not my strong suit, so we'll go ahead and come back to you when we got something decent to tell you. All right, guys, we're working on our tube frame here. I've got a couple of pieces of our 2x2 2/4 square tube. I need to 45 it on both ends. For starting out, I'm going to build a U-shaped frame. That's going to weld to our 3-point bracket. I don't like to try to wrangle a 20-foot section when I'm using this saw. It's just too much. And so what I'll do is I'll usually figure out the measurements on my pieces, and I'll cut them just a hair longer on the bandsaw, and then I'll bring them over here and I'll cut the angles after I get them over here. It's just a lot easier to manage when it's a smaller piece. So that's what we're going to do right now. All right, so we've got this mocked up. I've pulled my measurements and checked everything. It's good, it's square, measurements are right on. So I'm going to go ahead and get this tacked. Once I get this tacked, I kind of want to set it up on the frame over here and maybe even tack the frame, our 3-point attachment frame, to this frame. That way I can start figuring out, okay, elevation wise, what do I need? I know that there's adjustment up and down on the 3-point on the tractor, but I think when they raise it up or down, it's going to be on an angle. So we want to make sure that we have the right height so that when he lowers it down, it's level. Time for a phone call. Okay, guys, so the next order of business, we've got some 8.5-inch legs here. I 45'd them, and I've got them all beveled. I've got my fireball clamps and my fireball square here, and I've got this clamped up, so I'll probably put a couple tacks on this, and I'll do the other side, and then we'll be able to set this down and kind of level it up, maybe get some tacks on it, and then figure out what kind of gusseting we're going to use to get this strengthened up. Like I said before, put your tacks where you can cut it apart, where you can get to them. That is exactly the same there. Okay, so I think what I want to do is probably start working on some of the gusseting. So I'll probably cut my corner gussets for this and start figuring this. This one's going to be tricky because you got a compound angle here. You're on an angle here, so it's not square. Plus you got these angles here. So the gusset, I'm probably only going to have the gusset go to here. That one may take some figuring. Once I have something worth telling you guys, I'll come back to you. Okay, so we'll let those cut. And when I get them out, get them all cleaned up, we'll come back to you and see how they fit. All right, guys, let's show you what we've been up to here. So I got my gussets fabricated. You can see they fit nice. They're ready to get tacked on there. I've got some corner gussets here for this frame here. Got my other gusset here. You see it fits good enough to weld. Okay, so that'll tie everything in. That should make it nice and strong. Like I said, I'm gonna have one, I'll have a cross member here. So when I fit these corner gussets, I want to show you what I got going here. This is another one of those ways that I think it'll save you guys some time and it makes it perfect. I've got my corner gusset here. It's nipped there on the corner so that it'll clear the weld in the corner. What I've done is I've taken and clamped a piece of plate to the bottom of that tube. Now if I set my gusset on there, that puts it on there nice and perfect, but I want to split the distance on this tube. So what I'll do is I'll do some math real quick and I'll say, okay, it's 2-inch tube minus 3/8, that's 1 5/8 inches divided by 2. So that's 13/16. I need a spacer underneath there, 13/16. That'll put me dead center. I better double check my math here. Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking, well, who carries a shim that's 13/16? Well, I do, and I'll show you why. I don't know if you guys have seen these. Fireball Tool sells these, and it comes in this nice case, and it's just all different sizes of shims. There's a 2-inch shim. There's a 5/8 shim, and they're laser engraved, so you can read on them. You can read what they are really well, and then the other cool thing about them is they have magnets on the bottom, so they can actually stick to the material. And then they go down to, they make different kits, but this kit has 1/8 shims, 1/16 shims, all the way down to 32nd, I believe. Yeah, there's a 32nd. So it's just a really handy set to have because you're able to make the exact shim set that you need for something like this. I need 13/16. So what I've done is I've taken a 1/2, a 3/16, and an 1/8 shim, and I'll set these up on here. Then I'll take my gusset, set that on there, and you can see that puts it perfectly centered on that tube. Now I don't have to screw around laying out a line. I don't have to sit and try and hold it, because usually that never works. So I can just set this on there and then put my tacks here, and usually one in the corner, and then I'm able to just keep on rolling. So I just wanted to show you guys the process that I like to use for something like this. Those shims are a game changer, and I use those shims for numerous things like this. This is just one of the many examples of how I use those shims. All right, so the next order of business, I'm gonna go ahead and get all this stuff tacked on, and then the next order of business is I gotta start welding some of this out. I do have a piece burned for the back here for our little grade plate. So I think I'll get this stuff all tacked up, then I'll meet you guys over at the break and I'll show you guys what I'm thinking to break this and then set it up here and show you guys what I got. I've taken and punched my holes for my wear plate, and then I've laid this out, pulled 6 inches off the end. I'm gonna break these on a 45. So let's go over the press break. I'll show you what we're doing. Oh, we also have a helper in the shop over here. There's Gray. You helping? All right, here we go. Got 245s on it. Now we'll go over there and I'll show you guys what I'm thinking. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to take this plate, I'm going to set it right here, and it'll weld open corner here, and then I'll weld it on the inside as well. So it'll be welded 100%, and this grade plate's not going to be under a whole lot of pressure. It's just going to be pushing dirt and kind of flattening it out. So I think that's going to work. It's getting late. Me and Gray are going to go inside and eat some dinner. So that's probably going to be it for tonight. Catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, guys. So we're back on it tonight. I've got a piece of 2-inch square tube cut here for this cross brace. And I've taken and clamped a piece of plate to top and side here. So I can just lift this up, push it to the outside to where it's nice and square and flush, and tack it. All right, so I've decided instead of cutting this off and welding it out, where everything's fit and I like the way it fits, I don't want to have to refit it. So I do need to loosen these 2 nuts and smack this piece of plate down so that it's flush here. That way I can go ahead and get those welded on. I'm going to deal with that. I'll get that figured out, and then I'm just going to go to welding this out. So we'll get some footage of me manipulating this and welding it out. And then when I get to the next step, we'll come back to you and I'll give you guys a look at where we're at. All right, guys, we got this all welded out, cleaned up. Okay, I lied. We got a little cleanup to do, but it is welded out, the main structure. So I do still have this piece here to weld on. So you can see what I've done here. I set it on the table so that the plows were flat on the table. And then I set this up on here, and I'm going to be able to weld this. So I'll be able to weld this open corner right here, and then I'll weld it on the inside here. That way, when the dirt comes in here, it'll roll down into the ditch, and then this will just grate off the top if there's anything that's higher than the ditch. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this tacked on, and then I'll start welding it out. Then we'll come back to you after we get it welded on. We got to burn our wear plates so that we can attach the wear plates to our wheel ditch filler assembly. I did need to get some bolts, so I ran to the hardware store and I got some bolts and a sucker. So here's the bolts I ended up getting. If you haven't seen these, they're called a plow bolt. And the reason they're called a plow bolt is because they're used for things like plows. So what we're going to do is we're going to burn our wear plates, and when we burn our holes, we're going to burn a square hole. This little square section on the bolt from here to here, it's 1/2 inch, but I know if I burn a 1/2 inch hole, it's probably going to be too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go halfway between 1/2 and 9/16. And I'm pretty sure with the little bit of dross or undercut that we get, I'll be able to take this and drive this in with a hammer. Now you can see that it's also got a shoulder on it, and it's meant for a countersunk hole. So once we get these burned, we'll put them in the mill, we'll grab a countersink bit, and we'll put that little countersink in there, and then we'll drive these in with the hammer, and they shouldn't spin. So that's my hope anyway. So I'll go ahead and get the wear plates drafted up, go ahead and get those burned, and then we'll go over to the mill and we'll get those countersunk so that we can get this put together. So that's going to be the next order of business. Let's do it. Boom. All right, guys, let's show you where we're at on our wheel ditch filler here. I do have one of the wear plates on. You can see our plow bolts are in. They look good. So hopefully you can see now, this is the piece that'll wear out first. Once this wears out to the point where it's like up to this point, it's time to cut those bolts off, smack them out with a punch, and then swap out your wear plate. So the first one's in. I did end up getting a square punch and die so that I could punch these out. And it does do a fine job, if I do say so myself. So I'll show you guys what that looks like. Hopefully you can see that there's still a little coupon left in there. So that's what the square punch and die looks like. Pretty cool. You always want to make sure you check the alignment, especially on something that's square. You also want to make dang sure that you use the right size punch and die and that they're not mixed up. I watched a kid one day blow one of those up in his face, so you always want to make sure you got your safety glasses on as well. I think the next order of business, I'll show you guys how I put this other wear plate on the front. It's really not a complicated process, but we'll go ahead and go through this one together. All right, so the first thing I'll do is take my martillo here, take my hammer, and I'll drop the plow bolt in. And these are pretty dang tight, so I'll just look and make sure that the squares are lined up. Okay, and then I'll take my hammer and I just get it started. That'll make the process a lot easier when we go to hit them with the impact. You'll feel them sink in where they need to. They're still a little bit tight, as you can tell. See, I can actually push on these and they're not going anywhere. So now we'll go over to our ditch filler. Okay, so then I'll just drop this on here. The holes line up like a glove. All right, this is freaking loud, so I went ahead and put my earplugs in, and then I'm just going to put a washer and a nut on the back side of all three. I'm using Nylox for this. Okay, so obviously you can't put a wrench on this top side, so I just kind of put my thumb on it just to give it some pressure. Sink it in. I don't know if you guys have used this DeWalt 1/2" XR impact, but whew, baby, it'll snap bolts off if you're not careful. All right, so I'm going to use the same process to get the back wear plate on, but you guys get the idea. That's pretty much going to wrap this one up. I am going to try to get some video of this baby running. I'm kind of excited to see it operate. I hope it works the way we want it to. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching as always. See you on the next one.